The latest Pompey news, updates every day from the Pompey Sound news desk.
John MOUSINHO is asked when and for how long he plans on playing Conor Shaughnessy over this period of time when we've got quite a glut of games. And is he in any way lured into the idea of saving him for the Oxford game?
I'm not even thinking about the Oxford game at the moment. I will just make the decision based on Norwich and then see how he is after that. Shocks was disappointed for the fourth goal against QPR. Apart from that, I didn't think anything else was necessarily a reflection on his performance. When that fourth goal went in, we decided to protect Shocks and bring him off the pitch. Collectively, I don't think anybody came off the pitch thinking they had produced a stellar performance. We were always going to bring him off after about 70 minutes. That was the maximum he was going to play. At that point, with that fourth goal going in, I thought we could make that change and try to freshen things up, have a bit of a different impetus down that left-hand side with Swanee coming on. We'll see what happens after Norwich. We'll see what the nature of the game is, how much there is in terms of an output, how Shocks feels on the Saturday, and then go from there. That's one we are going to play by ear. We need to do everything we possibly can to win the game on Friday, and then go from there. We have to fully focus on Norwich. I don't think you can look at Oxford right now. You can't afford to do that at the moment. We have to fully focus on Norwich. They are both worth 3 points. If we actually get something against Norwich, it's massive. It gives us impetus going into the Oxford game. We can't afford to look at any other games this season and think they are more important or less important than others. Obviously, when you play against the likes of Oxford and Leicester, they are down there with you, so it might feel a bit different. But we need to try to pick up as many points as we can.
The dilemma of when to play Shaughnessy and for how long is one of the reasons why we pay our manager a good wage, because it's a decision that I suspect none of us would really like to have to actually make. Obviously, Shaughnessy himself is going to be in on the plan there, and the medics as well. And we also have to look at the cover that we have for Shaughnessy. If John MOUSINHO decides not to start him against Norwich, but to save him for the Oxford game, have him on the bench perhaps, in case we're 1-0 up with 20 minutes to go at Norwich, and we decide that we'll take those 3 points, and so we'll shore up our defence by bringing him on. But what we don't want to do is risk him getting crocked, because he's a player who looks as though he's going to be out for 2 weeks and it turns into 6 months, as John MOUSINHO has been underlining quite a lot over the last few days. He has players who look as though they're... A perfect example, of course, is Murphy, who was going to be out for a couple of games. Then it turns into the rest of the season. So he's got to make, real tight decisions based on probably a lot of guesswork as well as everything else. So it will be especially interesting to see what the starting lineup is when we get the team sheets for the Norwich game, and just have a look at whether or not he's going to risk Shaughnessy, which if he does, that means that he is going for something from Norwich, which will be a brave thing to do, because it is, isn't it? Whether he likes it or not, whether he says so or not, it's all about Oxford, isn't it? What are Steve Bones' predictions for the Norwich game?
I'm afraid I'm going to stick to, it seems a bit gloomy. You look at Norwich's form, the current form table. If you go back over the past 10 games for a current form table, Norwich have taken 21 points from their past 10, and we have taken 7 points. I just think it's too, they've got home advantage as well. They're 10th, but they're not going to. They're very, very, very unlikely to get in the playoffs. They're a little bit too far off to do that. But they're 10th. They're moving up. They were 18th, 19th not that long ago. Just think they're going to be a bit too strong for us. We've got the QPR game behind us. I think we'll be much more solid and harder to beat than we were at QPR, but I still think we're going to lose. I'm going to say 3-1 at Norwich, but I do think, because we won't speak again before Monday, I do think we're going to turn that round and get everything firing, and we're going to beat Oxford quite convincingly.
And you can catch a full half hour of Steve on the Pompey Sound podcast. If you go to your podcast provider and put in Pompey Sound, that you'll find our most recent podcasts listed, and you want the one that starts with the word Steve. Michael O'Neill, as you know, is manager of one of our relegation rivals, Blackburn. He's also manager of Northern Ireland. And during the week, he had to pick a team to play a fairly meaningless friendly against Wales. And 3 of his squad play for Oxford United. Oxford United contacted the EFL and said that they didn't think it was fair that this manager might have an opportunity to wear out 3 of their players, making them more vulnerable to poor results as they head towards hopefully surviving in the Championship from their point of view this season. What's John MOUSINHO got to say?
I don't think the media, or I, should be put in that situation. I don't think Michael O'Neill should be put in a situation where his integrity is questioned. I know Michael well, and he will make decisions for the best for Northern Ireland and Blackburn, but the fact the questions asked suggests to me there's a problem. It's not even the fact that the players have been sent home, it's the fact that it's been allowed. Somebody has been put in that position where they are allowed to make those decisions. That's the fundamental issue. I feel for Michael more than anyone, because it's through no fault of his own, he added. He was allowed to take the job, and he's not going to do any different, but maybe nobody scrutinized it enough at the time. There's probably going to be a few people calling foul this weekend over potential selection decisions made, who was sent home and who wasn't. We don't know what's going on, but the question being asked means it's potentially problematic. I think Michael is a man of great integrity, but no one knows and no one will know. I think the team selection is the best thing Michael thinks he can do for Northern Ireland. I have no problem with that. But the fact it has a knock-on effect and the fact it has a consequence means that question should never be there. Players play international games, we all know they play internationals, but we should never be looking at the situation everyone's been put into. So it's a question for the league. For clarity, I'm not questioning Michael's integrity. He's an excellent manager and great person, but the league have a lot to answer for on this one.
As Northern Ireland's friendly turned out against Wales, it was Tuesday, I think, they played 3 Oxford United players, 2 of them in the starting lineup, left back and striker, but I think they both came off after 60-65 minutes, and the third Oxford United player was one who I think was substituted on at around about the same time. So none of them played the full game, but they played a good hour. It doesn't look as though it was a particularly competitive game, and I think that they were avoiding the 50-50s, if you know what I mean. But nevertheless, they weren't at home enjoying a quiet evening and then getting an early night, is probably the point that Oxford United were trying to make. But it's too late, it's happened, and Oxford United have got to live with it, whatever the actual consequences of O'Neill picking a team on merit. That's what everybody is agreed upon. He picked the best team he could for what was needed on behalf of Northern Ireland that evening. That's his job. And it's clear from the respect that John MOUSINHO has for him, Michael O'Neill is a professional, and he is a straight up and down football manager, and a good one. So he was put in a difficult position. John MOUSINHO says he wouldn't want to be put in that position, and John MOUSINHO says that the EFL probably didn't scrutinise fully the decision that they took to allow him to have both jobs.
The Football Association has published the agent fee spend of every Championship club between February 2025 and 2026. It's further evidence of Pompey's cautious approach to the transfer market. Pompey's total spend on agents' fees during the last 12 months was £830,000, rendering the South Coast club one of only 4 Championship outfits whose agent spend was less than £1 million. The big spenders on agent fees in the Championship were Ipswich Town, who shelled out £11.7 million, Southampton, who forked out £8.3 million, Leicester, £5.8 million, and Norwich £4 million. The only clubs who spent less than Pompey were Sheffield Wednesday, inevitably, £534,000, and Blackburn Rovers, £676,000. On average, the rest of the Championship spent approximately 3 times as much on agent fees as Pompey. Agent fees are not an exact representation of transfer value. Much depends on the individual deal struck between the clubs and the agents. Nevertheless, the statistics do act as a general litmus test of spending power.
Another good reason to listen to Steve Bone's podcast on Pompey Sound is that he breaks those numbers down quite cannily, but nevertheless forces himself to admit that we don't know, as fans, enough about who these agents are, who the agencies that they are part of are, how the money is broken down, who pays those fees. The player obviously gives something to the agent in exchange for his services, but does the club that is selling the player give something to the agent in order to ensure that, or help ensure that the fee that they receive for the player is as good as it can possibly be? And does the club that is buying the player, okay, also pay the agent because the agent is able to say, well, look, I've delivered you the player that you wanted at a price that we agreed would be a good one. We just don't know. But 600 and something thousand pounds is a big piece of Pompey's outlay when you consider that we are restricting our recruitment team to spend no more than £1 million, maybe £1 million and a bit on players. And there we are spending almost £750,000 on agents' fees. It would be nice to know, provided it could be, the information could be provided to us in a way that we, non-accountants and non-wheeler dealers, will understand.